Hey physics peeps, we're going to take a look at adding vectors together. And there are a few skills that we're going to learn in the next little bit. One is to add vectors with the tip to tail method. And then to also, after we draw our vectors or add them with the tip to tail method, we'll draw the displacement. We're going to start with that. And to add something tip to tail, we might have two vectors like this shown here. And we have this arrow going to the right and this arrow going up. When we say add tip to tail, it's just like talking about an arrow having a tip and an arrow having a tail. But we always draw them kind of in this order. Like when we say this plus this, it's kind of like directions on a map. Maybe we're walking to the east, and then after that, we're walking to the north. So we're going to draw that out kind of like how we draw it on a map. We're going to take our first vector, our first arrow, and it's like we're going to copy and paste it, cut it, and place it over here. When I redraw it, though, I need to draw it so that that arrow is going in the same direction, and it's going, it has about the same length. So I'm trying to copy it as best as I can. My second arrow, I'm going to draw over here as well. Copy and paste it. But when I say add them tip to tail, again, it's the tip of one arrow that has to connect to the tail of the other arrow. And so we might go like this. So again, I'm kind of like copying and pasting this arrow over here. It needs to be the same size and be going in the same direction. Notice that it's going up, all that kind of stuff. So this is how I would add those two vectors together with the tip to tail method. And it is not like this. This is not tip to tail. This is tail to tail. And it is also not like this. This is like tip to tip. So we don't draw it that way. And we always add our vectors tip to tail, and they should connect. And it's like drawing a path. Like we started here, and we walked to the east, and then we walked north on a map. That's kind of what we got. And so that's adding vectors tip to tail. The other part is to draw the displacement. The displacement does not get added tip to tail. The displacement gets added from start to finish, or gets drawn start to finish. So let me show that. When we drew it this way, it's like we started right here. And then on our little hike, we finished right here. Our displacement vector always goes from the start of our first arrow, and it ends at the end of our last arrow. It's a straight line that goes from start to finish, but it's also an arrow that points from start to finish. So it goes this way. Notice that the displacement arrow, and I'm going to label this my displacement, does not get added tip to tail. It's kind of like tail to tail here, tip to tip up here, all that stuff. But the displacement only shows from start to finish. I want you to, over the next examples, I want you to draw it on your sheet of paper, because this is more of a doing thing than necessarily just a watching thing. So I want you to draw it on your paper. There's that part. We're going to take a look at another example where it's these two arrows. I want you to pause the video. I want you to draw these on your paper and see what that looks like. Go ahead, pause it now. And now we're going to come back, and we're going to add those vectors together. So check your answer. And I'm going to show some things here too. When we add these vectors together, this is not an okay way to add those vectors together. that's tail to tail. And this is also not an okay way to add those vectors together because the size of those arrows are not correct. And that's also tail to tail. And if we did something like this, though, this would be correct. So each arrow is the same size and going the same direction as these over here. And this is added tip to tail. It's like we started going this way and then we went this way on our map. And to draw our displacement, I want you to check this. So displacement, this would not be considered a correct way to draw displacement. Yes, it goes from start to finish, but this actually goes the opposite way. This is actually more like finish to start. And so remember, displacement does not get connected tip to tail. Displacement is drawn from where we started to where we finished. So we end up with something like this. And that's how you draw those vectors, tip to tail, and then the displacement. I'm going to label the displacement, and I want you to label your displacement as well on your paper. And here we go. Third one. These arrows. I want you to pause the video, and I want you to add these 4 arrows together with the tip to tail method. Go ahead and do that. And we're back. All right. So if we add these things together, again, adding tip to tail means that you redraw these. Same size, same direction, but they have to be added tip to tail. You can even add multiple ones together, but they have to go kind of in order, like you're following a map. Like you start going this way, and then you go down. And then you go to the right. And then you go up. And I'm making sure that all the sizes of my arrows are about the same as what this is. Oops, and that probably not exactly the same size. Something like that. When I draw, so adding a tip to tail, check yours, should look something like this. But then when I draw my displacement, check it. If you draw your displacement like this would not be the correct way to draw a displacement. Remember, displacement always goes from start to finish. So I need to make sure my arrow goes from where I started to where I finish. And I'm going to label it my displacement. And that's how I add those together. Now, something interesting about adding vectors together, or adding these arrows together, is that it really doesn't matter the order that you add them in. You'll end up with the same displacement in the after you're all done. Like if I were to add these together in reverse order, like do this tall one first and then kind of work backwards and do this one and then go down and then go this way, my displacement would still go from where I started to where I finished. It would look like this. But notice that my displacement, it's pretty much the same size and going in the same direction as this one. So displacement, you can add it and adding vectors together as long as you're adding them tip to tail. It doesn't matter the order, just kind of like how adding numbers doesn't matter the order that you put them in. You'll always end up with the same answer in the end. So that's kind of adding vectors together. Thanks for watching. Big things you want to make sure that you know how to do is add these vectors tip to tail. And then how to find the displacement. Remember, displacement always goes from start to finish. And that's and then you label it. You can label it displacement. All right? Thanks for following along. We'll see you guys later.